Show presents
First Impressions.
There's a new album out.
Oh, have you listened to it yet?
I'm digging the new album.
I'll check it out.
What do you think of the new album?
First Impressions.
Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Scratch a Track podcast presented by the Dude and Grim Show. Today we have initial first impressions. I'm the Dude.
And I'm Grim, and today we are going to give our first impressions on the recently released American Head by the Flaming Lips.
Yes. Before we get into it, everyone, we would love for you to like and subscribe to this channel. If you're listening to us on either, Google, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. There's so many podcasting platforms these days. But if you're listening to those, please feel to follow and like and comment and play along. We think this is going to be a good album. Now, this is not going to be a full scratch, right, Graham? This is just,
Correct. Just
our initial first impressions.
Yeah, most of the typical Scratch a Track format is really...
Which everyone's aware of.
Yeah, obviously. It involves either albums that we know very well or albums that we've dug into a great deal, but due to the, I guess, fairly recent release of the album and the fact that there isn't a whole lot of information out there, we thought it'd be good to just kind of talk about, as fans of a band that releases a new album, what are your first impressions of it? What do you initially take from it prior to going into the drawer and finding a screwdriver or other implement of scratching?
Another scratching device.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think initially when we kind of came up with this idea, we wanted to just listen to it once all the way through. And that just kind of didn't work for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, for me, for this album, it didn't work for a few reasons because I listened to it once and I was like, well, I really want to listen to that again. So that kind of didn't work. But also, it was released on September 11th, which is about, about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And we just hadn't had a chance to get to it. So now we're getting to it. I've listened to it probably, 15 times. Like I've kind of just had it on repeat. I'll probably listen to it. I'd say once a day for the past
I've probably listened to
weeks.
it. I'm going to say 5 times.
Okay.
5 times through. But, I think, aside from the obvious rule break in the first episode, which it'll still give us, I think, a pretty good chance to just give some first impressions.
Definitely. Well, this is their 16th album, which all in itself is crazy. I mean, I don't know how many bands out there have been able to put 16 albums out. And I mean, they started in the 80s through, now it's 2020, man. That's a long time to be making music. And they're definitely been one of my favorite bands kind of throughout the years. I think I really got into them in college. I think you introduced me to Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots.
Well, I got to give that really one
did it for me.
To shout out there to Evil or Adam Kotwicka. If you're out there, Evil, he was the one who I remember talked to us about this album, and I think it just kind of stuck at that point. And then, of course, you kind of go back and listen to other things, and then there's obviously been subsequent releases since then. But that was really my first exposure to him was that particular record.
Yeah, I think when I heard that, I remember that being on a spring break. I was like, it put the hook in me. But
I think that's an important album to reference here because we both kind of talked about it and thought that this album was more of a callback to somewhat of the sound of like a Yoshimi Battles of Pink Robots or even the Soft Bulletin, where some of the stuff that they made subsequently seemed to kind of depart more from that, and not necessarily in a bad way, just different. It was a lot spacier. It was a lot kind of more, not to say there weren't songs, but just these
cluttered noise,
bigger spaces.
Yeah, I mean, their production on their albums is exceptional. Dave Friedman, again, he's one of our favorite producers, and I think we'll be talking about him more on Wednesday. Hint, hint, about an album that's going to be coming up. So he's one of our favorite producers. He's always worked with them, and this album for me, when I first listened to it, it really, to me, the similar album is the Soft Bulletin. It's definitely, it's stripped down more. There's a lot more acoustic and a lot more piano and that kind of sound.
Well, that struck me right away is because this had been coming out, and after The Terror, I hadn't really listened to. There's 2 albums that they put out in between The Terror and this album, and I hadn't listened to those, and so, because of knowing this was coming up, it just got me to kind of listen to the band a little more again. And I wasn't sure about those 2 albums as much at first, but now I really enjoy those ones, especially The King's Mouth. I think that's great.
Yeah, I need to check those ones out a little more. Yeah. I will say it was kind of hard. I was, sometimes I get lost in whatever I'm listening to, and there was a huge kick when I was into the Flaming Lips, and then I just kind of, I don't know, for some reason got away from them for a few years. And so I've kind of missed out on those albums. But I saw this one was coming out and just randomly was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to download it, put it on. And I was pleasantly surprised because it is, from what I have heard of those albums here and there, it is, especially like The Terror. This is a departure from those, and kind of like you said, more of a throwback to Yoshimi and the Soft Bulletin.
And honestly, the lyrics, although a lot of them reference drugs, which, I mean, I have no problem with that. But I think a lot of them seem like more personal in the sense of telling stories maybe of their own life and their own youth and things
very
that
autobiographical.
happen. Yeah, and I guess I just didn't get that from a lot of the other albums.
No, and the Soft Bulletin has a lot of that. If you've seen the documentary, the Pitchfork documentary, where he talks about like I forget one of the songs it was is about. Well, there's the Spider Bite song. There's another song about his dad when he was dying from cancer. And so some real personal stuff. And I feel like this is definitely a throwback because a lot of the lyrics, his brother Tommy. I mean, he talks about him in the documentary a little bit, but he references him multiple times. And I haven't done enough research to really find out yet, but it sounds like from the songs, he was in some sort of accident. And I don't know whether he pulled through, but it sounded like it was really bad.
It didn't sound like it in the song.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
He just references like what the doctor said, basically saying like he's not going to last long. But then he talks about, with his mom, like, you and me are, at the, what is it? Mother, I've taken LSD. Yeah. Like it's kind of a interesting little confession to make.
It is. But it's funny. One thing I liked about that is I think when he does say that, it's almost like he says it in a way of like he expected some great awakening or some great revelation. Thought it was going to set me free. Yeah, and kind of realized that there's, whatever it did for him personally, there's still all these things in the world that exist after the awakening.
The awakening. Well, he does say he thought it was going to set him free. And then he says, but it's changed me. So maybe it didn't set him free, but it's definitely it's had an effect on him. But then, in one of the other songs, At the Movies on Quaaludes, You and Me Selling Weed. When we die, we're high. But I at the same time, I don't take this as like a drug album, really. Like I mean, he's talking about certain experiences and everything, but Flowers on Neptune 6, which is the third song on the album, is so. You back in the day, you and I, we had our mid-trip songs. Remember those? That we would always reference. I feel like to me, this is like a mid-trip album.
And typically it's long enough where you could have that.
You could, yeah. I mean, what are you doing for the next 8 hours, right? But one of the line, I love this song so much. Like, yellow sun is going down so slow, doing acid, watching the lightning bugs glow like tiny little spaceships in a row. I mean, it's very simple, but and just the acoustic guitar, it just sounds, it's really so pleasant, dreamy. Man. You can visualize that whole scene. That whole, in fact, I've probably seen it before. So you were probably there.
Yeah, there's a good one thing I like too is, so in Mother Please Don't Be Sad, he says the opening line to the basically he says a line that is the title of the next song, which is When We Die We're High. And he alludes to that song, and then that song comes in. That's probably my favorite song in the album. There's no words to it. I love how it moves, and it sounds like they got like this vibraphone on delay, and whether that's somebody playing a vibraphone or a mellotron, I don't know, but I love when they do that, and they're really good at it too, when they have these big kind of soundscape-ish, audible trips, and then all of a sudden the drums just cut and they really move, and at that point it just has the awesome drum beat, a good bass line, and like you don't need words at that point. You just feel the music.
It is, well, it's interesting you say that in that line or in that song they reference the title to the next song, and they kind of do that with watching the lightning bugs glow, because then in this Flowers on Neptune 6, it's watching the lightning bugs go. But it's just, it was kind of interesting that they kind of mix it up like that. But I mean, overall, I really, really dig it. And maybe a little something you can talk about, Casey Musgraves, who's featured on the album a little on on God and the Policeman, right?
Yeah. I watched a short video where Wayne Coyne talks about it, and he had wanted her to be on the album, and I'm not going to get into the whole story because it's a long story, but
I got that kind of time.
It's a pretty interesting story. It sounds like has to deal with like love and murder and all this stuff, and he said it was one of those songs that was one of the last ones they were doing, and they were kind of in a creativity panic of trying to get all this stuff done, and they sent it to her, not sure if she'd even want to do it, but she said she loved the song, and then came and did the song with them. And I thought it was interesting to have her on there, because I would never associate her with the Flaming Lips. I mean, she's like a country singer, and I had found out about, she's been around a long time, but me not having quite the ear to country music, I was not really that aware of her until, of course, she sings a song on the Frozen 2 soundtrack. And if you just saw my daughter pop in here a while ago, you can imagine I've watched Frozen 2 many times. And so that is like Lucy's favorite song on that movie that she likes to sing. So I kind of found out about her there. And then,
so you're going to start playing this album for Lucy now, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lucy did like the King's Mouth, though.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because they have worked on previous albums. They work with Miley Cyrus. She's been featured on some songs. So they have expanded their. I mean, they haven't become one of those bands that where every song features another artist, but they're not afraid to bring other people in if they can kind of contribute to the sound that they're going for. Sure,
and I like the fact that they don't stick to just like people in the alternative kind of music world. They kind of branch out, and Casey Musgrave has a beautiful voice, and it comes through really well in the song.
I just looked her up, and she's got a beautiful face too. Yeah. Yes, she's gorgeous. So good job, Flaming Lips. So yeah, I mean, this came out, it's only been out for 3 weeks, and I've really listened to it. I think if I would just say for a lot of the Flaming Lips fans out there, if you are huge fans of Soft Bulletin, Yoshimi, those types of albums. Maybe certain people have kind of gotten away from the Flaming Lips over the past couple years because they prefer those albums instead of some of the newer stuff they've done. This is definitely a throwback, so highly recommend it. But also, if you're just a regular Flaming Lips fan or you just want to put on something chill, this is a great album just to kind of like have on and put on in the background.
Yeah.
I find when I put it on, I think that's why I've been able to listen to it so many times, because it does kind of just go in flow. It kind of keeps a very consistent kind of feel to it.
And because of this, it got me to listen to a lot of the stuff I hadn't, and I think that all that stuff kind of it goes together quite well once you actually listen to it. And then this is a really nice kind of culmination of I feel like a really good mixture of a lot of some of the soundscape trippy kind of stuff, but yet there's still a lot of acoustic instruments. It's just like you said, it's just kind of a nice throwback maybe to where they came from, both musically and lyrically and in the substance of the album.
Yeah, I think it's, I would say for kind of maybe your average fan, your average music fan, it's maybe a little more coherent and digestible than some of the things that they've kind of done previously. And there's certainly, I love a lot of that stuff too. There's definitely a time and place for it.
But I wouldn't start with the Terror.
They can,
if you never listen to them,
probably not. If
I don't know
never
that I'd
listened to
start
them,
with that.
Yeah. Probably not. Well, what do you say, Graham? Do you think that wraps up our little first impressions of American Head here?
Yes, it was a good impression.
Great. It was a very good impression. And this is going to be kind of a series we're going to do a little more. It won't be like, every week we'll have one of these. But when, bands kind of that we like that have new albums coming out, we're going to kind of
check it out. Yeah.
Check it out and hopefully, we listen to them and we like them, but I can't say that's going to be the case for every band. But definitely I was, I don't know if I'd say pleasantly surprised by this one, but it was an enjoyable experience and I'm going to keep listening. So,
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, okay, everyone. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you're still hanging around. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that because it would mean a lot to us. Until next time, I guess, Wednesday, we got a good album coming out. So look forward to that. Happy hump day soon. And,
so we'll scratch you then.
We'll scratch you then. We're not going to scratch you now.
Yeah.
All right.
First Impressions
Is produced by the Dude Grim. Additional music provided by More. That's ... MORE. And the Tims. TIMNZ. Copyright 2020. The Dude and Grim Show.